Tree Gelman, a seemingly superficial sorority girl, wakes up in a stranger's bed at a college dorm room after a night of partying. The man who helps her with her hangover is Carter Davis, Israel Broussard, a kind and reserved student who seems to be the complete opposite of Tree. Her immediate reaction to him is dismissive and rude, as she asks for Tylenol to ease her headache and intimidates him into keeping their encounter a secret. Carter complies without protest. As Tree leaves Carter's room the next morning, she's approached by a student activist advocating for global warming. Her irritation with everyone around her grows, especially when she encounters a chaotic scene in the dorm, including a fire alarm, sprinklers going off, and a group of boys drunkenly singing the lyrics to 99 bottles of beer, one of whom faints. On her way back to her dorm, Tree bumps into Tim, who suggests taking her out on a subway date. She rejects him, telling him she has no interest in pursuing further interaction. Back in the sorority house, Tree is reminded of a house meeting she must attend before lunch. Her roommate, Lori, reminisces about embarrassing moments from the night before and teases Tree about keeping her birthday a secret. Tree is unimpressed, throwing a cupcake Lori made for her into the trash and sarcastically wishing for a new roommate. Lori, clearly hurt, informs Tree that the cupcake was made from scratch. Tree brushes it off. Tree wakes up once more in Carter's room, confirming that she is caught in a never-ending loop, reliving the same day over and over again. The next time the loop resets, Tree decides to confide in Lori about her situation, telling her someone is going to kill her that night. Lori tries to calm her down and suggests skipping class, which Tree does. She barricades herself in her room, determined to avoid her killer. When Danielle informs her about the party again, Tree refuses to go. In her dorm room, Tree finds a birthday card with the killer's mask drawn on it. Armed with a hammer, she attempts to protect herself, but is killed again by the masked figure. The loop resets again, and Tree wakes up in Carter's room once more. As she relives the same day yet again, her frustration grows, but she starts approaching the situation more analytically. Tree opens up to Carter about the loop, and he helps her form a strategy. He suggests Tree make a list of suspects who might have motives to kill her. Tree begins considering various people in her life, and the list includes her sorority sister, Danielle, and her professor, Gregory. After each attempt to find her killer, Tree dies in different ways, only to wake up again in Carter's room. Her suspect theories prove false, and she realizes that she must approach the problem differently. At class, Tree meets up with her sorority sisters and insults another member for her lunch choice, continuing her dismissive attitude toward everyone, including her professor, Gregory. Tree's bitterness and indifference are apparent, and she doesn't hesitate to belittle those she interacts with. Back at the dorm, her friend Danielle reminds Tree about the party that night. Tree receives a voicemail from her father, which she ignores, as her relationship with him is strained. On her way back to the dorm, Tree notices a music box playing in an underpass tunnel on campus. Curious but unnerved, she approaches it. That's when a masked figure, dressed in a creepy baby mask, ambushes her. The killer attacks Tree violently, ultimately murdering her. However, instead of truly dying, Tree wakes up again, confused and disoriented, in Carter's room. At first, she believes she's experiencing a bad dream or prank, but when the day unfolds exactly as it did the previous time, she realizes she is stuck in a time loop. The same series of events plays out again, and Tree remembers every detail from her previous life. This time, she avoids the tunnel where she was killed the night before. When she arrives at the party, she realizes it has been locked from the inside. As she enters, she punches someone in a mask, only to discover it's Nick. And the party is a planned event by her sorority sisters. She is killed again in the same brutal manner, along with Nick. With each death, Tree's attitude begins to shift. At first, she is dismissive and uncaring toward everyone around her, but as she relives the day multiple times, she starts to engage with others in a more thoughtful way. She apologizes for her previous behavior toward Carter, Lori, and others. Tree even walks out naked once, shocking everyone, but it's part of her evolving character. She begins to connect with people and take responsibility for her past actions. In one of the loops, Tree faints after being bludgeoned to death and wakes up in the campus hospital. The masked killer appears, but it turns out to be Carter, checking in on her. Gregory, a hospital staff member, shows her x-rays revealing major trauma to her head, which should have been fatal. After being assured that she's safe, Tree sneaks out of the hospital when Gregory leaves, stealing his car keys. She spots the killer's mask on his desk and grows suspicious of him. However, she's proven wrong when the killer kills Gregory. Tree escapes in his car, but the killer follows her. A police car pulls her over, but the officer is killed by the masked killer, who subsequently blows up Tree's car. Tree dies once again. After waking up once more in Carter's room, Tree confides in him about the time loop and her suspicions about the killer. Carter, initially skeptical, begins to believe her after she accurately predicts several events. Together, they try to piece together the puzzle of who's behind the killings. Tree opens up about her strained relationship with her father and her mother's death, realizing her previous selfishness has prevented her from forming meaningful relationships. This newfound self-awareness becomes key in her journey of growth. Meanwhile, Tree learns about John Toome, a serial killer locked up at the Bayfield University Hospital, and believes he's behind her deaths due to his history of murdering women. She rushes to the hospital to warn authorities of his potential escape, armed with an axe she takes from an emergency shield. But she's too late. Toome has escaped, and the security guard is dead. She also finds that Carter is killed once more. Tree confronts Toome in the hospital, and after a struggle, she hangs herself voluntarily to reset the loop again. She finally comes to terms with her life, realizing how much she took it for granted. She reaches out to her father and begins to rebuild their relationship. As Tree moves through the loops, she continues to interact with everyone in a positive manner. She apologizes to Lori for her poor treatment of her, stands up to her professor, and supports Becky, a sorority sister she once mocked. In one final loop, Tree connects with Carter, who helps her discover the truth behind the murders. She figures out that her roommate, Lori, is the killer. Lori had poisoned the cupcake and used Toome's hospital background to her advantage. It turns out that Lori was motivated by jealousy and resentment, wanting to make Tree suffer for being perfect and popular. In a tense showdown, Tree confronts Lori. After a struggle, Tree is able to stop her from killing her again. She feeds Lori the poisoned cupcake, and after throwing her out the window, the time loop finally breaks. Tree escapes the cycle of death and is able to live the next day for real. In the aftermath of her ordeal, Tree's life takes a positive turn. She wakes up the next morning in her dorm room, but this time, she's different. She greets Carter with kindness and shows genuine gratitude for his support. Her relationship with her father has improved, and she is no longer the selfish, disconnected person she once was. With the time loop finally broken, Tree has changed, learning to appreciate the relationships she once neglected. She's more empathetic and willing to make amends for her past behavior. Her journey of personal growth not only ends the loop, but also marks the beginning of a new chapter in her life. If you like Recap, then subscribe Recaps You for more interesting movies.